Imaginary Prisons, a version of Sleeping Beauty, in memory of Colin Way Reid. The gardeners, gazing through their open shears, or staring sightless from their wooden ladders, stand helpless by, and dream they cannot lower their upraised sickles poised 100 years above the labyrinth of stems. As briars, even while dreaming of their destinies, as smoke and ashes in the gardener's fires, fasten themselves around the spellbound blades, and steal the dreamer's hats in mockery, to lift them out of reach of stick and ladder, then lose them on their way to taking over the twilit walls and roofs and 100 chimneys, against whose edifices chimney swallows have woven for their families' habitations, with rosebud twigs and dust of crumbled mortar, in threads they've tugged gently as milliners from out the silken shirts and ruffled trousers of failed princes hidden in the briars. The swallows unaware these men have starved, entangled in their struggles with the briars. Yet every year more numerous and scary, these faces one by one among the roses bear witness to the private agony of what it means to have a single purpose. Peacocks patrol the garden's sleeping borders, malicious as a troop of evil fairies, who pace and lash the brickwork with their feathers' opalescent hems, and pacing screech how perilous is purity of heart. And briars tentatively hoist their thorns, across the dizzying ledges schisms form, where being and non-being break apart. The kitchen boy, distracted by a quarrel, is dreaming that he opens up a box of banished knives, blinding even at twilight. In this way makes his adversary cower, but ducks in fact before the furnace stoker, around whose lifted shovel embers sparkle and hang like bumblebees around a flower. And though you laugh, to them it greatly matters, for they've had confirmation of the rumor touching upon the kitchen maid's betrothal, the girl whom both of them have tried to capture, like awkward brooms chasing a wind-borne feather, today revealed her secret plans to marry a woodcutter from the adjoining forest, who's older than both rivals put together, the only man the girl has wanted ever. But tell me, seeing how in joy her fingers touch her reflection in the plate of copper it is her task to breathe upon and burnish as gently as a sleeper barely breathing, say, who could wish the future on another? For she must wake from momentary rapture into a grief approaching lunacy to learn, among the skeletons of princes, a humbler man has long since lost the struggle, and witnessed to the end the work of briars as, blooming through his slowly loosened fingers, they carried off his axe as if it were a weightless toy among the waves of roses. Upstairs her mistress in a sitting chamber has drawn a diamond from a velvet sack, intending to bequeath it to her daughter, but transfixed in the dream, with palm outstretched, as though to weigh a flame, she seems to shiver, and finding that the diamond, howsoever its light wobbles unstable as a fire, feels to her sightless fingers icy black. The mountain ranges on the moon, never so near as now, never so clear, never so brilliant with a brimming tenderness, as here before the court astronomer, who sleeps beguiled at his telescope. In dreams he has beheld the final vision, granted after the lifetime he has given to studying the systems of the night. He dreams, sunk in a lit, celestial slumber, that lifting up his eyes he has observed beyond the black of night the boundary and inner surface of the crystal sphere, and curved foundation wall of the sublime, by which we are enclosed, he dreams with light, where black to rushing radiance is transformed, and matter into spirit evanesced. He dreams his life's not wasted. Furthermore, for all is as his formulas suggest. The diagrams and models of the worlds which he spent years committing to the care of tranquil, pencil-covered papers rest all in perfect accord with what he sees. So let him sleep, and sleep enthralled, and never mind that it's a false discovery. And please, don't pipe up that the obstacle of blackness which he dreams he's looking through is just as black as it were black before, and fully insurmountable as ever. For you and I know walls as high or higher, and each of us has dreamed a private terror, or call it whatsoever you desire, disintegrates and blows away and clears our paths until we waken to discover the very thing we thought had disappeared still waits for us in silence up ahead. So leave him his perfected universe, fulfilled as it was promised in his theory. Leave him the page on which his calipers are perched and shining like a triangle of light beams, springing from his pencil marks. Leave him, though you and I are taught the sky is backed up by a blackness like a hammer, already fallen on his circular, irradiated dream, as if the spheres were
bus shattered.
in jagged angles even geometry is dumbstruck by. The seamstress, caught up in a dream of sewing, is dreaming that in lieu of banished scissors she can't employ to cut an abstract pattern, she can't affix a cloth with banished pins, is dreaming that her two hands grip a flowing bolt of cloudy, lightning-colored fabric, which she is poised with all her rapt attention to tear in one electric flash of noise. And clowning like a slave of comedy, the aging simpleton, whom she has hired in sympathy, is pressing in his fervor the bonnet top which he elects to wear, to keep the weather off, winter and summer, and dreaming of his job of chasing flies. Beneath the shadow of his lifted swatter, the housefly dreams she wrings her hands with worry. Below this workshop lies the court's despairing, lone, perpetual insomniac, alarmed as if he overheard their dreaming. But seeing how he's grown perversely eager, lying flat out and hopeless on his back, to learn at last which sound will finally shadow his nerves so thoroughly that it will keep his body, mind, and soul awake forever. I'll grant you that it's something of a challenge to stifle giggles, for, with sheets and covers pulled up around his wakeful head adorned with layered nightcaps, like a crown of flannel, with puffy parts for muffling the ears, he looks like some unheard-of king of cabbage, condemned forever in his lonely garden to dreaming that he cannot fall asleep. Assigned to live next door because he's silent, though under lock and key because he's mad. The ruler's brother sits with elbows propped and hands holding his face above the trestle, regarding through the prison of his fingers the specter of an empty china platter as he's regarded it for countless years, since he was thunderstricken to discover a trivial flaw disastrous to his theory, in which the world is made of porcelain, but porcelain that cannot crack or shatter, as demonstrated in his published paper, The Paradigm of Glass Unbreakable, with which he thought to rectify the anger of those like him who'd keenly felt the bitter accident of being dropped and broken. And yet the dunderheads refused to hear. And given that the blind, refining forces which glaze the world in an ideal fire appeared to have no meaning to the others, he ceased evangelizing and retired, dropping exhausted to his study chair, and turned to meditation to restore his faith and to refresh his memory by summoning the specter of a platter to represent our wholly perfect order. And that's the moment, as I said before, that this unfortunate was struck by thunder and terrified to see, and no mistaking, the surface showed the first hint of a fissure, a web of cracks across the porcelain, like black lightning unfurled and fixed forever into the lightly shattered glaze was creeping. A test of faith which lengthened year by year before his swearing of a vow to stare until the fragile web of laws breaking the tragic glaze apart come to appear to be the laws by which it's held together. Behind the man, trapped in the labyrinths and mazes of his theory's shattered beauty, the chimney sweep, like an incongruous and homely soldier standing at attention, is troubled into a dream of reverence, since he, in the fulfillment of his duty, with savage mop, widowed a chimney swallow, whose voice, he dreams, still flutes from out of doors, like a petition for the simplest mercy, calling his mate back from a territory no mapmaker is hired to consider. One prison engineered within another, and hidden in the blackness of the chimney. Though you and I are schooled in the motto that goes, "A stranger's tears are only water," though we hold in the very least regard the sentiments of such a worthless rascal as does to death an ordinary swallow, and though you scoff that, having murdered her, the boy is stunned before her crumpled figure, that he once having seen the swallow fallen, and with the premonition of disaster, is moved to doff his cap and mourn in honor of one, however small, who has crossed over the line dividing nothingness from history. If you think nothingness goes way too far, if history is the word that sets you crowing, it isn't history if it isn't written. It's history written here, and written in memory of one who's flown ahead of us to enter that nothing than which there is nothing vaster. The angelfish, streaming their whispered letters, are dreaming they turn back from what they whisper, to flee along their unseen drifting ladders, abandoned in the poet's empty quarters, since he was carted off a prisoner, and charged, lacking the benefit of lawyers, with sharpening his pencil to a point nearly approaching the invisible. Absurd, you say, that any could consider a pencil point a real and present danger. Yet here he keeps, in the remotest tower, the company of sundry malefactors, all dressed in jailbird hats and jailbird shirts, and dreams his angelfish are drawing near the paper he spread out against the table. Like candle flames, they flicker as they whisper the letters he transcribes, and back and forth, their wobbling reflections through the water give to the page an underlight of fire, as if fire were a property of paper. And drowsing next to him, the king's bird keeper, arrested for importing foreign birds sharp-beaked enough to constitute a peril, is dreaming that the brass keys of the jailer chirp in the locks of manacles and fetters, soft as the first in all the aviary to voice a note before the blackness clears. Nearby the drunkard dreams of floating beer. The counterfeiter dreams of flawless money that issues from his confiscated needle in spectral temples, webs, and ghostly scrolls, blooming in portraitures of shattered numerals. Nearby, the painter, dragged in by the collar for spending his allotment for a year's supply of paints on 1/2 ounce of umber, is dreaming that his new laid patch of plaster is parching dry as desert sand before he's able to complete his fragmentary fresco of utopian waterways, where dolphin leaps like transitory doors to palaces across the water form shining parabolas above canals. Here too, wrongly denounced as a false servant, when he foresaw the devastating scandal attendant on the infant's christening, and then arrested on the ruler's orders, when he described the blackness furthermore which beauty, at the hour of betrayal, would see within the light of birthday candles. The clerk's clairvoyant dreams that on the stairs that spiral downward to his darkened parlor, his wife is standing stricken at the door, reading the posted writ of his arrest, as if the black-gloved hand of the informer were laid directly on her narrow shoulder. And you and I can see his dream is true. Nodding above his handcuffs in the corner, and exiled from all company, but for the presence of 2 mirror-image spiders, who dream they wage an obscure tournament, the traitor dreams of climbing up a ladder and reaching from prison moat to prison tower, although a tower less and less familiar, and dreams, casting his eyes over his shoulder, he sees the ladder upside down in water, himself, as he climbs higher, growing smaller, himself as he looks downwards, looking upward. In dreams he scrambles, falls, and crashes toward his death with outstretched arms, and there is met by no one but the water's mirrored, looming, panicked image of himself. The king's uneasiness at coming trauma compels him to the shop of the clockmaker, where one by one, on his more desperate orders, according to his right of search and seizure, the kingdom's clocks were hauled in all together, and all of them, like world-is-ending seers, incarcerated for the way they chatter, telling obsessively a single story over and over, all reduced the ruler to telling them, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." And now dismantled, emptied, strewn in parts across the benches, tables, sills, and floors, they've fallen silent as their very maker, who sits with his demolished masterworks, and following instructions slowly lowers his brush, dejected, into paint dissolver, to swab away the black of painted numbers from every clock face in the territory, the disassembled royal water chimes, the cuckoo clocks wearing a look of terror, the grandfathers dumped out like ransacked drawers, the microcosmic wheels and golden gears, and useless screws and labyrinths of wires, and miniature bells and gongs and hammers, and swaying springs like just beheaded roses, and black unfastened dials pointing where there's nothing left to point at but the ruler, who with his crown, exchanged for the watchmaker's headband with the lens extended forward, is breathless with attention bending over the timepiece of his father's father's father, which he is touching with the jeweler's diminutive, unaging pair of tweezers, as if to halt once and for all the source of seconds, minutes, hours, days, and years. And this is how we find him, as he stares sightless into the ruined factory bequeathed to him, and dreams that he discovers the future isn't manufactured there. It's manufactured somewhere in the past, the present in the past, past in the past. It lies beyond his legislative power, though banging gavels bring his courts to order and pound out points of law as sharp or sharper than pencils, pins and needles, knives and scissors. The future in the past is fixed forever, like words locked up in pencils, webs in spiders, like flames imprisoned in the match-tipped sulfur, like thorns locked up in seeds hidden in roses, imprisoned in the budding stems of briars. He cannot overrule the condemnation. More patient than a needle in a drawer, it is the past that lies in wait for her, concealing in a point grown ever sharper the blood drops of the mock assassination. In rightly dreams he cannot save another, and though you rush to say he rests assured of the compassion of the dispensation, and though the promised torch already burns, by which the briars are lit, and roses turn to smoke and ashes in the gardener's fires, through which the true prince walks and is unharmed, I've learned to make a study of the hour, when grander schemes that mock our calculations reveal that we're the emblems standing for the consequence of what we cannot master. Say what you wish about the past and future, but we have learned that here and now is where all time stops in a face we've held as dear as she is held, who's overcome with roses, and now is never where the promised fires are burning, but the time that's set apart for you and I to stand and sightless stare, as gardeners, gazing through their open shears, stand in the shadows of the promised briars.